Toledo, Spain. A notary sits in a dimly lit chamber, his quill scratching across parchment that should never have existed. He writes, subject's pupils for millimeters at rest. 6 millimeters when presented with host, insufficient dilation. Flag for secondary observation. He is measuring a woman's eyes during communion, recording the diameter of her pupils when she looks at the cross, not for medicine but for evidence. Her name was Isabelle d'Orda. She was 33 years old, and in 18 months, men would cite the size of her pupils as proof that she should burn. But here is what makes no sense. By 1584, this was not new. The Inquisition had been measuring women's bodies for over a century. Pulse rates, tear production, how many times they blinked during prayer. They had entire manuals dedicated to what a woman's flesh would reveal when her words would not. 300 pages of instructions on how to read the body's involuntary betrayals. What were they actually looking for? And why did they believe that skin and sinew could speak louder than confession? If you have ever wondered what institutions do when they stop looking for truth and start manufacturing, it stay with me, because what happened to Isabelle happened to 60,000 other women, and the method they used did not die in Spain. Spain, 1478. The Inquisition begins, and most people think they know this story. Religious extremists hunting heretics, Jews forced to convert, the accused tortured until they confess, flames and screaming and the rack. That is not wrong, but it is not complete. Because here is what the numbers show. Between 1480 and 1530, the Inquisition executed about 2,000 people. Terrible, documented, undeniable. But in that same period, they interrogated over 40,000. Then of those 40,000, roughly 23,000 were released without execution. So what were they doing with the other 17,000? What was happening in those hours, those days, those months between arrest and release? The answer is in the archives, in Valladolid, in Seville, in repositories across Spain where researchers are still finding ledgers that most people will never see. These are not confession transcripts, they are observation logs. Subject perspired when asked about Sabbath. Subject's hands remained dry when touching crucifix. Subject failed to produce tears during passion recitation. Observed 3 consecutive times, page after page, woman after woman. Pulse, pupils, perspiration, tears, trembling. The Inquisition was not just prosecuting heresy. They were building a catalogue of how the body betrays what the mind conceals. And they had one population they practiced this on more than any other. By 1540, nearly 58% of those brought before tribunals were women, not because women were committing more heresy, but because the Inquisition believed women's bodies would reveal it more clearly. Isabelle's door opens on a Tuesday in September 1589. 2 men stand in the threshold, familiarists, officers of the Inquisition. They do not shout, do not break anything. One of them shows her a rolled parchment with a wax seal. She is not told what she is accused of, that comes later. First, she is taken to what they call the audience chamber. Not a dungeon, not a torture room, a chamber that looks almost bureaucratic. Table, 3 chairs, crucifix on the wall, window with iron bars. But the sunlight still comes through. The ordinariness is deliberate, because here is what is in the Inquisition training manuals. Yes, they had training manuals written by Tomás de Torquemada himself in 1484 and revised 6 times by 1570. Here is what they say about the first 72 hours. The accused who enters in terror will confess to anything. The accused who enters in composure will reveal everything. They did not want panic. They wanted observation, because terrified people are useless for what they are actually trying to do. Isabelle sits in that room for 6 hours before anyone speaks to her, just sits while 2 notaries watch from behind a wooden screen. They are not writing her confession. She has not said anything. They are writing descriptions. Subject shifts position every 11 minutes. Subject touches face 4 times in first hour. Subject's breathing rate increases when footsteps approach door. They are not interrogating her. They are cataloging her. And here is the detail that reframes everything. Isabelle does not know it yet, but she has already failed 3 tests. Not tests of faith. Tests of biology. To understand what happens to Isabelle, you need to understand what the Inquisition actually believed about the human body. In 1487, 9 years after the Inquisition's founding, 2 inquisitors published a book called Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches. Most people know it as a witch-hunting manual, and it is, but buried in its pages is a theory that conversion to Christianity was not just spiritual but physiological, that when someone genuinely accepted Christ, their nervous system would change, their tears would come easier during Mass, their pulse would quicken before the Eucharist, their pupils would dilate at the sight of the Virgin, and if those responses did not happen, the body was remembering something else. By 1520, there were Inquisition physicians employed not to heal but to measure. They had instruments, calipers for measuring pupil dilation, water clocks for timing pulse rates, graduated vials for collecting and measuring tears. In Seville in 1537, a tribunal spent 4 months testing this theory with 50 confirmed conversos and 50 old Christians, running both groups through identical religious exercises while measuring physical responses. The results, still in the archive, showed no consistent difference. None. But when one inquisitor wrote in the margin that their instruments detected nothing, he added one more sentence: continue observations. Expand sample size. They knew their method did not work. By 1537, they had proof. They used it for another 150 years. It has now been 18 hours since Isabel's arrest. Finally, an inquisitor enters. His name is Alonso de Mendoza. He has been doing this for 22 years. He carries a wooden case about the size of a prayer book and sits beside her, close enough that she can smell the ink on his clothes. The questions start, but they are not about Judaism. Describe your wedding night, he says. Isabelle hesitates. She has been married 14 years. What does this have to do with heresy? Mendoza opens the case, revealing a glass vial, a thin brass rod with millimeter markings, a small mirror. Did you weep, he asks. She answers no. He makes a note. Then he asks about her daughter's birth, which saint she invoked, whether she felt ecstasy when the child first breathed. But he is not listening to her words. He is watching her carotid artery while a notary behind the screen times her pulse with a water clock. Then Mendoza does something that appears in dozens of Inquisition transcripts but is almost never discussed. He takes out the mirror, holds it 6 inches from Isabelle's face, and asks her to look at the crucifix while he watches her reflection. He is looking at her pupils. The notation reads, subject's pupils constricted when viewing crucifix. Expected dilation absent. Expected by whom? Based on what? There is no citation, just an assertion that Isabelle's eyes should have responded differently. And here's what makes this worse. Isabelle knows what he is doing because by 1589 everyone knows. Converso families have been teaching their daughters for 2 generations how to perform the right physical responses. Cry when you take communion. Let your hands shake when you kiss the cross. Isabelle is 43 years old and she has spent 20 of those years making her body lie. It is still not enough. On the 7th day, Isabelle confesses. She admits everything, weeping genuinely now because she thinks this is over. Mendoza closes the ledger, tells her she will be moved to a different cell while they prepare her reconciliation ceremony. The door closes, and then he writes one sentence. Subject's confession exhibits physiological inconsistency. It means Isabelle confessed wrong. Not to the wrong things, but her body while confessing did not display the right responses. There was a checklist for grief. Isabelle cried, but not copiously enough. She trembled, but it did not spread from her hands to her torso, therefore not genuinely repentant, therefore eligible for execution. Isabelle d'Orda was executed on March 15, 1591, in Toledo's Plaza de Zocadova, before a crowd of 4,000 people. They read her crimes aloud, lighting candles on the Jewish Sabbath, refusing pork, teaching prayers to her daughter, and then confession lacking physiological consistency with genuine repentance, body failing to display adequate signs of divine grace. That is what killed her. Not the candles, not the prayers. The fact that her pupils did not dilate correctly. They offered her a chance even at the stake to reconcile, to confess with the right physiological responses, and they would strangle her first before lighting the fire. A mercy. Isabelle confessed again, said everything they wanted to hear. But the notary recorded subject's confession delivered without adequate trembling. Voice remained steady, eyes dry. They did not strangle her. They burned her conscious. Her daughter Anna was in the crowd, 9 years old, required by law to watch. 20 years later, when she herself was accused, Anna gave testimony that still exists. She said, I learned that no truth could save her. I learned that I must teach my own body to lie more perfectly than she did. I learned that surviving meant becoming a stranger to my own flesh. Anna lived because she mastered the performance. The Spanish Inquisition officially ended in 1834, but the method did not die. It appeared again in Salem in 1692, in women ducked in water, searched for marks that would not bleed. The logic survived, that the body cannot lie, that flesh will always betray. That observation is evidence, that your own nervous system is the enemy. Isabelle's pupils were 4 millimeters when they should have been 6. And for that crime of biology, she burned. This story moved you. If it made you think about the terrifying ways power can weaponize our own bodies against us, leave a comment below. What do you think about a system that made people fear their own tears, their own heartbeats? Share your thoughts, because this history matters, and remembering these women matters.